My name is Celeste Beatty. I am the founder and brewer of Harlem Brewing Company. This is our 25th anniversary. The inspiration for me getting into home brewing, because I started brewing not with the plan of getting into the beer business, I started brewing because I was working with a Ben and Jerry's partner shop. A Ben and Jerry's partner shop is a place that is locally owned by the community and supported by a not-for-profit organization. So I love cooking and being a part of that team of running the partner shop. I was learning about ice cream. Had a chance to go to the factory upstate in Vermont, and it was just really interesting how they made ice cream and the fact that they were using brownies from a bakery in the Bronx. And I love brownies and I love chocolate, so it was kind of a self-indulging kind of thing. Around the same time, because I like cooking with beer and wine, I was learning to make small batches of homebrew in my apartment right around the corner from the Ben and Jerry's. And something about the two, learning about ice cream, delving into making small batches, because I was brewing um, not ice cream, of coffee and stuff like that, but um, making the beer um, kind of reminded me of making my mom's homemade soups. I could I could use the same pot that she used to make soups. Could put my water in, stir in my grains, extract all the flavors from the grains, even be a little adventurous and not just adding hops, but adding cardamom and the various spices that I had in my kitchen cabinet. So I was like, wow, this really is a soup. But I quickly learned that it would take 2 weeks or more for the fermentation to happen, the conversion of the sugars and the grains to become alcohol, blah, blah, blah. But all of that kind of learning about the ice cream, learning about the beer sort of converged together, and I fell in love with it. That was just home brewing. I did not plan to start a company or a brand. But what was happening in Harlem at the time is all of this entrepreneurial excitement and the second renaissance, as they call it. So everyone was thinking about, what can I create? What can I do? And my decision was to take the brewing a little further. Well, I think I certainly faced a lot of challenges, but some of them I continue to face. The most significant one was most people didn't believe that I knew how to make beer when I walked into a bar and they asked me to introduce myself. I was kind of hesitant to tell them that I actually made the beer because prior conversations like that was met with either laughter or just, huh? I'd have to repeat myself like 3 times before they really heard what I said. So that was really interesting because the fact of the matter is I'd had a chance to travel to Africa and I met many women that brewed in the community, and this is just what they did. Here in New York, they had homebrewers clubs. There, it was just what they did at home, so it wasn't a big deal. Um, the obstacles that I face range anywhere from my gender. Um, they thought I was coming in to do I wouldn't say a wet T-shirt contest, but they thought I was coming in to promote the beer, or they thought I was a salesperson. But the big challenge I continued to have was whenever I talked about how I made beer. I think the other thing was when we first launched the Harlem brand. Our first brand isn't on the table. It was our Harlem Sugar Hill Ale. The fact that Harlem was on it was a negative at the time that I launched. It was seen as too ethnic, too too closely connected with black people, and therefore was not seen as a marketable product then. Now it's a little different, although DEI is now working against the same thing that we worked against when we launched the brand. So interestingly enough, some of the things that were obstacles then have now come back because of DEI. Um, so I would say definitely gender, the fact that I was a woman, period, whatever my color was just women don't brew beer, and that was sort of hard for people to grasp. The fact that I was of African descent was problematic because they didn't even think black people drank beer, nor less make it, was the response. And particularly, they thought black people drank Coke 45, St. Ides, and a few those other beers. So craft beer, as was what I was making, was thought of as being something that people of color, in general, Black, Latino, or otherwise, did not have an understanding of or an appreciation of. So when I would talk about this as a craft beer, they were like, "Well, Black people are not going to drink that." So the assumption was also made that I was making beer for Black people when I was making beer for people that like good beer. So those are some of the things. I continue to have those issues. Those aren't issues that have gone away. I am a member of the National Black Brewers Association, so these are issues that we continue to talk about. I'm also a member of the Brewers Association, which represents 9,500 breweries in the country. I would say from the beginning, my brewing style was not following the recipe. Very much like my life, I'm very much, I would say, a contrarian. So whatever people typically say you should do, I'm always trying to find another way to take it in another direction, or be looking for ways of just doing something a little different. So part of the reason why I really fell in love with brewing craft beer also is because I like flavor. You know, I come from a Southern tradition, spices and different layers of flavor in the food. For me, that was important in beer. And at the time when I was brewing with the beers that I was brewing with, some of them friends, like the folks at Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams, I think Dogfish, Sam Calagione, who's a mentor of mine, and other brewers like me. I think his brands, and part of the reason why he's part of Sam Adams, it's a whole other conversation, is because he brought a level of flavor and creativity to his beers that Boston beer has, but in a different way. For me, when I thought about craft beer, had a chance to see how beers are made culturally in parts of South Africa. They were using the ingredients that they had there, some spices, different things. So my approach to brewing was looking at, the base, a golden ale, a lager, and how we can add layers of flavor. So I would just go to my kitchen cabinet and literally add things like cumin and coriander, grains of paradise, things that I had. I wanted to see how that might bring another layer of flavor, and then how that might add flavor to my foods. So I would say it was the style is very experimental. Walking down 116th Street as I did today, going into the spice shops of the West African shops there, they have amazing spices. Some of it I've never heard of. I've never smelled some of the aromas that they have, and just looking at all the different things that different cultures have to offer that might give you a different experience with the beer. So I draw it from different places. This is a beer that's actually my mom on the can. She was very involved with. She is still with us, and very involved with human relations, bringing different cultures together, trying to find ways that we can get along, and that might involve having someone of Latino background, East Indian background, African diasporic, continental background, all sitting at the table, bringing all their foods with all their flavors. So that gave me a lot to think about growing up. The different flavors and spices and aromas, whether they were at our house or we were at their home. This beer is, it has cinnamon. It has coffee from Colombia. It has chocolate from Mexico. All those different flavors in here. And it has baobab, which is a African spice. So it's sort of a lot going on. And it was really kind of, I love chocolate, as I mentioned earlier. I also like coffee. And my mom does too. But I love cinnamon. Cinnamon was like a common theme in a lot of things that we ate a lot of oatmeal growing up. So, you put, so it's a beer that I really wanted to reflect her power as a woman, the strength of who she is, what she represents in the community of North Carolina, and the impact she's had, on bringing people together. So I think those spices, you think about coffee, it's strong, chocolate and the history behind those things, and cinnamon kind of reflects that bold, you know, uh, flavor and, the person that she is today. She's helped me, she's brewed this beer with me a couple of times, both home brewing and at the various breweries that we brewed at. So I would say that's that. Our Harlem Renaissance Wit beer, this won Best Beer in New York City with KCBC and the other breweries when we had the contest. Wasn't something I expected. I'm being quite honest with you. I was like, wow, we're in the room with these guys. But this beer is a wheat beer brewed with coriander, cumin, which I learned about growing up from those gatherings, orange pill, grains of paradise, all those different layers of flavor in the beer. And the cumin is probably a little bit of a departure from your typical Allagash, Blue Moon, and those other brands out there because they had not used cumin in their beers. So this is kind of a personal choice. I love the flavor. Do you guys cook with cumin? The flavor of it, the aroma of it, all that. I just really get excited about that. So it was kind of an experiment adding that because I love the way it tastes and the way it smells. I wasn't quite sure the initial test batches. I was like, okay. Um, when we introduced it at this competition at somewhere down near Wall Street, there's Brookfield Place. They had a whole competition, and it resonated with people. Something about that, the same way it did with me. The flavor of the cumin combined with those other spices, and to our surprise, when they did the voting, it ended up placing, um, I guess, somewhere at the top, high enough for us to win the People's Choice for this beer. I love the beer. I love those layers of flavors. So that's our Harlem Renaissance Wit. Our Harlem 125th Street IPA. I wouldn't really say that it's, it has a lot of the common hops, Mosaic, Big Secret, HBC 586, Huguenot, a number of other hops. I think this wasn't necessarily about the flavor as it was offering an IPA, a little bit of juice. Uh, I grow hops, not commercially, but just as a hobby. I've learned a lot about hops over the years, like not just the juiciness that you get in IPAs and the bitterness that you get with other beers. I've learned about their connection to cannabis, their connection to hemp, and the lupulin powder and the flowers that impart not just the aroma, but it also imparts, what do they call it, soporific impact. It relaxes you. If you didn't use hops in a beer, it's actually used medicinally. If you have pain, it helps relax your arthritis. It helps relax your mind from ADHD. There's so many different things that it's said, because, I always say, well, it's not proven, but it is used medicinally. I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. I was never really into pot necessarily, but as a tea, when you drink this as a tea, it does relax you naturally. So it has a lot of amazing benefits. So I was like, wow, we talk a lot about juicy IPAs and New England IPAs and West Coast IPAs, but nobody really gives the hops any props. Hops are amazing. And when you look at IPAs, a lot of times with any beer, people, what's the ABV? Okay, that's nice. But the other thing you really should look at, in my opinion, and many other brewers, is the IBUs. Sometimes beers will show a number, 36, Dogfish 90 minutes. That's all about the hops, right? But it's not just the number, it's what does that number do to the beer and to you when you consume it. We get a little saucy, get a little relaxed when we drink the beers because of the ABV, but the other part of the story is the hops. One of the first beers I drank was the Two Hearted IPA. Can't remember the name of the company right now because I've had a few beers. But it was really, a lot of hops in that beer. And I kind of hadn't eaten a lot on the day that I had it, and I was knocked out by that beer. It was so much. The high IBUs in there and the hops, the blend of hops were very relaxing. So I like to talk about hops because they're amazing plants. They're perennials. I don't know if you know, they grow on a vine around April when the ground warms up. They start growing, inches and inches a day. And next thing you know, if they're healthy, you're going to get a 15 to 20 foot or more plant. And these beautiful cones form that are full of this yellow powder, which is in the family with the THC in a way and the CBD and other stuff, which is why they're cousins. It's a cousin to these other plants, not because it has THC, but because it has similar characteristics in terms of how it impacts your body. So, 125th Street IPA is about celebrating more than 200 years of the cultural corridor of 125th Street. That's the name. On the hop side, I mentioned a little bit about that. So I think a big focus for us, starting a beer in Harlem is not easy. There's a lot of amazing churches there. So I didn't mention that. I don't like to play that up a lot. But the reality is a lot of the Southern Bible Belt is embedded in Harlem because of the Great Migration. So I don't like to characterize that as an obstacle, but it was a challenge. So for me, from the very beginning, it wasn't just about, well, let's just get a beer out there. It was interesting things are happening in Harlem. I was encouraged to take my little home brew and create a brand, but to create a brand that celebrates the culture and history, not just to loosely throw a beer out there. And so it's just been a wonderful journey as I've grown in this to learn how much beer plays a role in the community. My favorite beer that I've created and why. Honestly, I could not really say I have one favorite beer. And I would say that some of the creations aren't about the recipe necessarily, it's about the story. So I can tell you about a couple of the beers that we've done, particularly collaboration beers. One of the fondest beers that I've gotten most excited about is a beer called Thunder Twins. Any baseball fans? I see you got the baseball hat on. So Thunder Twins is about two of the most amazing baseball players in the history of baseball. I mean, their stats are like so significant. Everybody knows their name that's in the baseball. Josh Gibson and Buck Leonard. So these two families got together. My connection to the Thunder Twins beer is because one of the family lives in the town that I'm in North Carolina, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Buck Leonard, the Lou Gehrig of baseball, is from that town. Josh Gibson was a very good friend of Buck Leonard, so they played in the Negro Leagues together. They played in Negro Leagues because of segregation and race relations in our country. You know the story probably. Did not allow them. Great as they weren't allowed. I think Jackie Robinson broke the color line, but these guys were a little bit ahead of him. I like that it's an IPA, juicy IPA, New England IPA, but it's a story that we were able to share behind that. So I love that. Most recently, we did a beer celebrating the story of an African American brewer from North Carolina that was enslaved for 14 years. She brewed. That was a collaboration with Whoopi Goldberg. So Whoopi Goldberg let us use her likeness on the can because she knew it would help get the story out there. So with her support, we were able to get the story out there about Patsy Young, who escaped from enslavement, went down the road 50 miles, and she brewed for 14 years, and then she was captured and re-enslaved. So people have said that I'm the first African-American brewer, and blah, blah, blah. That's not something I say. I just want to be clear. I'm not into those type things. But when I found out about her story, I talk about her story because had she not had the obstacles of race and enslavement, she would have had her own brewery. So that beer was a historic ale made with pine needles from a local farmer that I know in North Carolina, honey and molasses. Uh, a similar recipe that might have been made during that time. And then there's similar collaborations that we've done that touch on history because the interesting thing about cans and packaged goods is that you're able to tell stories and those stories find their place and people discover those stories. One technique or ingredient that I love experimenting with. Think about that for a moment. Well, I don't know if I love experimenting with this ingredient, but I've experimented with it. I'm trying to think of the mushrooms. The funky ones. What do they call the mushrooms? They put them in food, umami, and all that stuff. Truffles. So I'm not saying that I like experimenting with them, but there's a family here in Manhattan that somehow we got connected, and they asked me if I would try to create a truffle beer. This has been like 10 years ago. And I wasn't that interested in truffles. Some people like really into it. They pay a lot of money for it. First, when I smelled it, I was like, oh no, this is not. You guys smell those things? I couldn't get past the smell to think about a beer. I don't know. Whatever the less expensive one is, the one they gave me to try out. I found that to be particularly challenging because what I discovered about those funky truffles was that there's so much intensity to the aroma and flavor. I still have some cans now that I laid down. I don't have a cellar, but they're in a box away. I know it's been more than 5 years. When I open them up, I still smell the aroma, and it's like scary. I'm like, come on, this must have died down by now. But the challenge with that, when I think about even with hops, and cooking with hoppy beers, the hops can sometimes overwhelm certain dishes if you're not careful. But the challenge of trying to figure out exactly how much of the truffles I could actually put into the beer without it being overwhelming to the particular style. We were using a Goza and a wheat beer for this. I don't think I ever got there, but I can tell you when I shared those cans with people that love truffles, it was like gold to them. I mean, it was liquid truffles. I was like, I just don't get it. I mean, hey, for people that are into that, I want to try it again because there's a brewery here in the city that recently did a truffle beer, which I've not tasted. I really need to taste it. That type of an ingredient and trying to strike a balance of how much. I tried. I did different dosages of the truffles, and for me, it seemed like regardless of the dosage that I did, it was just super powerful regardless. So that was an interesting experiment. I can't say I mastered it. I don't know if it can be mastered. I don't even like the idea, quite frankly, of having a beer with truffles in it. It's just disgusting to me. But I did learn to appreciate the truffle lovers because we ended up doing a truffle dinner at one of our restaurants, in a Sedapani restaurant in Harlem. And I learned a lot about just how much certain people like these things. I mean, they had truffle everything. Truffle mac and cheese, truffle cocktails, truffle oxtails, truffle baked ziti, truffle collards. I mean, they went all out. It was just, I think, there's certain people that like that type stuff. So I think that's been an ingredient I would say. Wouldn't say I necessarily like it, but in learning about what truffles were, because I just thought truffles were just chocolate, because I actually made chocolate truffles with beer in it, the candy. I had just been told that there are these funky mushrooms that are called truffles. So when they asked me to make a truffle beer, I was like, "That's easy. I'll put my chocolate in the beer." It's like, no, that's not what and I realized that I didn't really know a lot about truffles at that point. So I definitely tried again. Um, I thought that was particularly fascinating. I think a truffle in a dark chocolate coffee stout might be interesting. You know, it's like that truffles that you taste on the fries, just a hint. If I could do just a hint on this, that might be interesting. Yeah, yeah. Definitely there is. There's an organization that I'm a member of called the Pink Boots Society, which represents not only women brewers, but any women that work anywhere in the brewing industry, whether it's hospitality end of running a tap room bar, you know, selling or growing or being involved with hops, barley, any of the ingredients, um, or owning a brewery or having a brand. It's definitely grown a lot. It's grown a lot from the days that I mentioned earlier when there was just so many questions about my gender, and people couldn't see women as brewers because they only saw men. So over these last 5 to 10 years, it's been a lot more growth, more women owners, more women throughout the brewing industry, which is great because that gives us a space to really connect with space that's comfortable and exciting and fun and encouraging to connect with women in the industry. Trends in craft brewing. I don't know that I focus a lot on the trends in craft brewing. I mean, I know sours are a thing right now. Barrel aging has been a thing for quite some time. I think I personally am being involved with a farm in North Carolina. I'm very interested in looking at some of the green plants. I mean, people do kale beer. Uh, I'm really interested in looking at how we can infuse some of the green vegetables and other stuff that's grown on the farms. I can't tell you that I've wrapped my head around a particular ingredient, but we are looking at how to form a closer relationship. We do have them growing grains. Of course, that's nothing new. It's you need grains, you need some type of fermentable grain. But in terms of looking at other ingredients, I'm looking to see some of the other stuff that they're growing on the farm and how we can look to that as a way to add other layers of flavors. I don't really focus a lot on the trends. I'm not really a trendy type brewer where, oh, they got an IPA, we got to have an IPA, but we do have an IPA because customers ask for it. I think the Queen Stout with cinnamon, baobab, and other stuff that we're using. I want to delve into some more of the African spices. There's a spice, I don't know the name of it, that I found several years ago at a West African spice shop on 116th Street. It was just so unusual. I need to go get some more. I use it in some food. Something about the food is sort of a test base for flavors, sort of looking at how it might taste in the foods, and then I think about it for a beer. So I definitely want to delve into more of the spices when I go grocery shopping. There's all types of things from all over the world. I don't have a clue what they're for. Kind of frustrates me because I'm thinking people from those areas know what those things are. I don't have an idea. Luckily, we have the internet, so maybe I can capture the image and it'll tell me what it is. But I'd like to discover more of the flavors from different countries that I don't know anything about. I think part of that is a language barrier, so luckily we have apps, so if we speak the language, we can get to the heart of what that is. But I think there's a lot. I just think there's so much out there that I don't know anything about because of the language and cultural barriers. So there's a way if we could break down the language and cultural barriers. These beers that we brew now and other brewers, that's cute. but that's just a small percentage of what's possible. So I think the more we talk, the more, like I discovered cumin because of our friends from East Asia. That's how I discovered cumin. They were at my mom's house, so they cooked some food with it. So I think there's a lot more for us to discover about what we can do with beers and beverages in general, but we've got to talk to one another. You got to tell me, well, what is that? What is that starfish thing that has all the little antennas on it? I didn't know what that was until the lady was standing there putting them in her basket. I said, well, what do you use that for? We had this beautiful conversation about how she uses starfruit. So I think, I think we've only tapped the surface as Americans in terms of, particularly as Americans, in terms of what's out there to brew with. Oh man. Well, the one project that's always been a big project is finally having a brewery in Harlem, because we no longer have our Airbnb space. But now it's not having a brewery in Harlem. It's having a space in Harlem to share our beers, yes, share conversations. My background is in international relations and mediation, so when I look at what's happening here in the United States and different countries, I'm like, we've got to have conversations. So I don't even know. It's no longer pursuing opening up a brewery in Harlem. It's just not even feasible to do that anymore. It's not an industrial space. I mean, none of that. So I'm focused more on creating a space where we can have conversations, where we can connect around one another. The beer is secondary. So we are looking for space in Harlem. I mentioned earlier we have the project in the UK. That's about bringing people together. North Carolina, it's about bringing people together. What's next? I think I have such a passion and interest in farming. I really want to do all that I can to support farmers, particularly in the South. So we have some farmers growing grains because they've never been a part of the brewing industry on any level. So they're looking at adding grains, and they're looking at adding other types of crops and fermentable grains that we can use. I'm very excited about that. I didn't even know there were so many black and brown farmers in the South. I'm like, whoa, I thought they lost the farms. Because I know my family lost some of their land. And I think that they are encouraged to know that they can come into this industry. And there are a few people that aren't from our community that are opening up the doors for us to do that. There's a artist, I guess I could say this now. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Petey Pablo. He was a hip-hop artist down from North Carolina. Well, he just bought 40 acres right next to the farm that I'm involved in. So I don't know when this is going to be shown, but I'll be meeting with him for the first time next week when I get back to North Carolina. I'm introducing him to the farmer that's growing the grains. And already on our first conversation, I was almost in tears because Petey was going to buy a tractor to harvest his trees. And Larry, our farmer, my farmer partner, who's been on that land since the 1700s, enslaved and then sharecroppers, and now Petey's like, oh man, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with these 4 acres of trees that I just cut down because he's building entertainment space there. And then Larry said, oh man, I got you. He said, you don't need to buy a tractor. I got all that. So it was just nice to see two guys that haven't met yet, but they're right next door to, I get excited about that. So I'm really looking forward to, you ever heard of Farm Aid? So I'm looking forward to Petey and other people in the area coming together to do a Farm Aid-like fundraising event so that we can get equipment and other things that they need to really grow as farmers. So I think for me, the beer thing has been great. It's been a great journey and a very tough one over the last couple of years. But if I wasn't, slinging beers, I'd be at the farm trying to do what I can to connect the farmers to the different grocery stores that we sell to, getting their stuff in there, finding ways just to show them some love. Because when you go down there, you're like, wow, they got all this land, but they don't have the tools. So in whatever little way I can, I want to bring as much attention as I possibly can. So I didn't know Petey. I heard his interview on the radio. I was like, wait a minute, he got 40 acres down there? And I called like 3 times. He has this recording on his voicemail. It says, Well, when you leave me a message, you better leave a message that's really compelling and interesting, or I'm not going to call your ass back, something like that. I was like, oh, I'm going to call him about farming. He'd probably never call me back. So I called like 3 times, and finally I didn't even know that someone had called me back. There was a voicemail in my voicemail, the messenger, and it said, my name is so-and-so. I'm calling on behalf of Petey Pablo. I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm just, I'm hoping him and other people like him can help us do like a farm aid like event annually to just show people how wonderful, how sexy, how amazing, how smart these farmers are, the stuff that they're doing down there. And I'm even more passionate about it now because of what I heard one of our so-called leaders say about Americans don't have any intelligence, they don't know what they're doing, all this craziness. But when I go down there and I see the ways they figure out how to do stuff with very little of anything, I'm like, this is brilliant. So, sometimes my business advisor might say to me, you just need to focus on selling beer. I don't think that anyone and anything that they can do, in my opinion, can just focus on just what they do. There's too much going on in our communities. Even if you don't have the money, just take the time. Um, we've got to figure out a way to bring other people along. And in my small way, with my family, friends, and people that support us, that's something that I really, really want to do as much of as I possibly can. North Carolina happens to be where I am a lot. That's a starting point, but I think my commitment and my obligation as someone who has had an opportunity to get into a few places is to bring as many people as I can along. That's what I want to do. And that's what keeps me brewing, being able to make a difference. Not just make beer, but make a difference. Don't do it. Oh, don't brew it. What advice would I give inspiring brewers? Oh, God. Inspiring brewers. Well, lessons learned. I spent a lot of time focused on open a brewery in Harlem, open a brewery in Harlem. And we still haven't done it to this day. We've done things, projects, but it never happened. I would say in this climate where you've seen brewery after brewery close, as I said, I was shocked to hear that the Bronx Brewery isn't brewing in the Bronx anymore, and countless other breweries have closed down. I think, and I'm working with someone now, she wants to have her own brand, and I keep telling her, it's easy to brew beer. Brewing beer is not difficult. But brewing beer as a business with so many, even the grocery store we got into today on 116th and Lex, it is flooded with so many beers. I know that I'm going to have to go in there or have my son or somebody go in there and do tastings because you can sell beer just doing demos, hand one can after the next. But if you just sit that beer in there and think it's going to walk off the shelf, that's not happening. And you're going to have a big headache on your hands because, as I said, brewing the beer, doing nice labels or whatever it is you do, that is a simple part. How are you going to build a market? How are you going to sustain the market? How are you going to even make a living from it? A lot of the brewers don't do this full time. They do it as a part-time thing. So I think if I were even considering, not that I would at this point in the marketplace in the world, starting a brand or brewing company, I would really look at any beer that you're going to brew, you need to pre-sell it. Don't brew anything unless you know exactly who's going to buy it. Number one. Number two, if you're talking about opening up a brewery, I'm just going to be honest. Good luck with that. Right now, banks do not have an appetite for funding breweries because they have too many loans on their books that haven't been paid. And every day I open up my phone, there's another auction. There's a lot of equipment on the market. Matter of fact, the system we have in North Carolina, someone gave it to us. So banks aren't trying to help you buy a brewery, and it's just not right now. It's there's a lot of breweries. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of breweries that got in for different reasons. Some of it, each story is different. The ones that just hopped into it because they thought there was an opportunity to make money or whatever, those are the ones that are falling off right now because they're finding there's a lot more to it to even make any money. I think if you do open up a space, it's not enough just to have beer. If you're just focused on making beer, like we're expanding into other spaces right now, don't waste your time. People are drinking less beer. They're looking for non-alcoholics. Some of them are still doing the RTDs, the punches and all that stuff. But it's not impossible, but it's not going to be easy. Um, it's just not easy. It's too much. And a lot of the breweries that are surviving, it's because they have financing behind them. They have huge amounts of financing behind them. So I always just say, do your research. If you feel like you have a market for your brand, whatever it is, make sure you pre-sell it. Get out there and get the orders before you even put a product on schedule for production. My crystal ball. Uh, I I don't know that I've thought a lot about my vision or what I anticipate might happen, but I think you are going to see some more closures. I think the future might see some more collaborations. A number of breweries come under the same umbrella. Those that are sincerely want to sustain and grow what they're doing, they can't afford. I mean, I mentioned the Bronx Brewery. They can't, for whatever reason, I don't know their story, they can no longer sustain what they're doing. Um, I've talked for years, I've tried to collaborate with a number of breweries in the city because of the obstacles we have. Never got any interest. I had to go to London, um, do that deal. That just wasn't a spirit of collaboration. I think for those that really want to survive, in my little opinion, they've got to get a little bit more collaborative in their mindset. They've got to think about how do we get black and brown brewers or any brewer that's sincerely interested in surviving and thriving, and they feel like they have something to bring to the table. They've got to think more about collaborating together. The project in the UK is a collaboration with another brewery. We could easily do that on any number of levels here in the city. There are a few that are doing it. So I think the future of craft brewing, um, for the breweries that are left, we need to think a little bit more about collaborating. How do we bring, like they have these spaces, food halls. Think about a beer hall that has a number of different brands that have not just beer to offer, but they have stories to tell. They have experiences to create. They're bringing unique stories that haven't been told. I think a lot of black and brown brewers in particular, we have stories that people haven't heard. We have experiences. We have unique things we can bring and combine with what other breweries that aren't from our community are doing. I mean, I think we can tell our own stories. I think there's a lot of appropriation of black and brown culture, which is fine that they want to talk about our culture, but bring the culture into your space. Put some authenticity behind what you're showing. I think there's several opportunities for breweries to have authentic stuff happening there, not just the murals and the rest of the stuff. They may not like that I'm saying this, but I'm just telling you what I feel. I've been to many breweries around the world and around the country that have the great murals, but we're missing in action. I think in those places where you may have a black or brown brewer that can bring that authenticity to what you have on your wall, do that. And don't make the assumption that, oh, they're not going to want to do that with us. No, you're wrong. Be a little bit more, not aggressive, but just reach out a little bit more. And I think back to what we were saying about finding what we have in common, I think they'll discover that a lot of these brewers can answer some of uh, can fill in some of the blanks that they have by bringing their authentic culture to their breweries. Um, I think those are some of the conversations we have to have, not just in brewing, but we have to have those conversations in our community. How can we tap into our mutual cultures? How can we tap into the things that are unique to each one of our cultures? It's not a black or white or Asian or Latino. It's a cultural thing. How can we bring the cultures together? Each culture has something unique. That's no different in the brewing space. How can we bring all of that together in one space and celebrate that? Because I'm really tired of talking about race. I am really tired of talking about race. Let's bring the culture of what's unique about each one of us as individuals into the same space. If we can do that at a baseball game, at a football game, at a basketball game, all different people in a whole bunch of one group celebrating these ball players and people in sports, why can't we bring that into a space where we can celebrate like a brewery? So I think we're going to have to really think more collaboratively. We're going to have to think more cultural collaboration to to sustain and to find a real genuine way to move forward together. Whatever we do, beer, the community. I know you guys are. I'm very worried and concerned about what's happening in our country. It's just it's absurd. It's sick. I think beer may be the only place in terms of Garrett Oliver said the democratization of brewing. I mean, we've got to think about these spaces as becoming gathering places because whether it was Africa, whether it was Central America, whether it was some parts of Europe, all the continents have a beer culture and alcoholic beverage culture. And those cultures at the heart of it brought people and communities together to discuss marriage, love, challenges. We've got to get back to that. I'm not trying to say we should drink. Somebody might tell me, oh, she just say we all should just get drunk. No. But it's just embedded in who we are as people, and it's always been connected to gathering and conversations. I saw that in Africa. I saw that in my family reunions, family gatherings. We all have it in some way. There's a beverage, a little sippy, a little whatever that is that kind of calms you down, relaxes you. So yeah, I think looking into the crystal ball of the future of the brewing industry, we've definitely got to think a lot more uh, collaboratively, cultural collaboration. We've got to think about it. Uh, I think that it may not be the whole answer, but I think it will help address some of the issues we're having right now about the lack of resources. We don't have as many resources as other cultures. So those that have, hey, let's try to get together with those that don't. We may not have in our pocket, but we definitely have culturally. We definitely have in terms of creativity. So I'd love to see that more than we have. Less competition, fighting against one another, and more recognizing how we can come together.